legally qualified to vote in an election. As someone legally qualified to vote, I count as someone who can become a member of the Democratic Party. Now, similarly with language, uttering these sentences counts as performing a certain type of speech act. But performing a certain type of speech act counts as making a promise. Making a promise counts as undertaking a contract, and so on. Now, so here was my hypothesis, and there's something right about it, but I'm going to show you how to improve it later. The hypothesis was all of human institutional reality is created by repeated applications of that form, of the form whereby we count something as having a certain status, and then that status gives us a status function. That is, so for example, in the example I gave you, uttering certain sentences counts as performing a speech act. That's X1 counts as Y1, but then Y1 equals X2, and that counts as Y2. So, and then you go on, you can have Y2 equals X3, and so on. You can keep iterating upwards indefinitely. You see, here is the problem. If this is the apparatus by which we create human civilization, it seems too weak, it's too fragile. And the answer, a part of the answer is no, it's not as weak as it seems, because it has two remarkable formal properties. The first is that it iterates upward indefinitely. X1 counts as Y1, Y1 equals X2 counts as Y2, and so on upward indefinitely. You make noises, that counts as utterances of sentence of English. Those sentences count as a promise. That kind of promise counts as a legally binding contract. That kind of a contract counts as getting married. And then in the state of California, all sorts of things happen when you get married. You get spousal benefits, income tax deductions. Males now get pregnancy rights, for God knows what the theory behind that is. But anyhow, I had a friend, he had a difficult pregnancy and had to take time off from teaching. But all of these are cases whereby we assign status functions according to this principle. And then not only does it go upward, but it spreads out laterally. So my favorite example is money, but I don't just have money, I have it in my bank account. And my bank account is at the Bank of America on Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley, and it's put there by my employers, the regents of the university, and I use it to pay my credit card debts and my state and federal income taxes. Now in that sentence I just gave you, all of the nouns, except maybe Telegraph Avenue, name status functions. The Bank of America, the regents of the university, their credit cards, all of those are status functions, and they're all created by this X counts as Y. So you get a huge interlocking structure of institutional reality, and of course, it isn't that you have institutions on one side and brute facts on the other side. That's not it. The whole point of the institutions, typically, is to affect brute reality. So I go and I make noises, or nowadays I put marks on my computer, and it gives me a piece of paper, and I deliver that piece of paper, and then I get on an airplane, and I'm transferred to Prague in the Czech Republic. A brute physical change of my position due to a set of institutional facts. So that was my initial theory of human social reality, is that the institutional parts of social reality, and those are the distinctive parts that create human civilization, those were without exception created by repeated application of the constitutive rules of the principle X counts as Y in C. Now I think it's a pretty good theory, but I'm now going to show you how to improve it. This is how far we got. We started with physical particles, and we went to consciousness and intentionality. We went from there to language, and now we've got to a theory of human institutional reality as created by repeated application of constituted rules. Now I'm going to show you how to improve the theory. So let's everybody take a deep breath. How much time have I got? I think I'm doing all right, right? No,
yeah, about 50 minutes more.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I don't know if I want to talk. I'll get exhausted before then, but let's keep going. I think it's half an hour I have to go. Right, okay. All right, so here we go. It's a good theory, but there's some interesting objections to it. And those, in philosophy, you should welcome objections because they teach you how to deepen your original view. One objection I made myself, and that is often you can have a status function like this without a pre-existing rule. I mean, a bunch of kids might get together and just decide to count somebody as the captain of the team. Or in an informal group of people, somebody might just emerge as the leader of the group. People might just decide to count her as the head of the group, even though there was no accepted pre-existing procedure according to which X counts as Y. You have ad hoc cases. Another set of cases that are interesting are cases where you can create an institutional fact without an X term. You create it out of thin air. You just count something as having a Y status, even though there's no X there. See, I took cases like this piece of paper is money, or Barack Obama's the President of the United States, but there are a lot of very interesting cases where there is no X term, where you have freestanding Y terms. Let me give you some examples. My favorite example is corporations. The human serpent is a very ingenious beast, and the invention of the limited liability corporation is a remarkable fact if you think about it. It's counterintuitive, but it enabled an awful lot of people to get very rich, and it still goes on to this day. You limit your risk by creating an entity that has no physical reality at all. The Apple Computer Corporation has an office, and they have directors, and they have stockholders, but they don't have a physical existence. They're purely abstract, and so on with all other corporations. It's an abstract entity. My favorite example was money, but in fact, most money has no physical existence at all. See, most of your money, I'm very naive, and I like to think, I have money in the bank, I ought to be able to go to the bank, and they will go to the drawer that's got my name on it and open it up, and that's my money right there. It's not how it works. No, there is no drawer in the bank with your money in it. So what goes on? The bank keeps a record of how much money you have, but the money as such has no physical existence at all. The record, the magnetic traces on the computer disk, that's not money. That's a representation of the amount of money that you have. But it looks like, well, then there ought to be the actual money somewhere. There isn't. There simply is no physical reality to the money. And indeed, we could move to a society, if debit cards became universal, whereby you never saw any physical money. You bought and sold by simply transferring the amount in your account to somebody else's account, and they transfer the amount in their account to your account when you sold something to them. Now, what's going on? How can you have a status function with no physical reality underlying the status functions? Everybody see my problem, and indeed there are lots of cases like this. Universities we like to think of as actual physical entities, but it sometimes happens that a university simply gets up and moves to a different physical location. Same university, different set of X terms. What's going on in all these cases? Okay, so now I want to deepen the account by contrasting language with other forms of social ontology. And so far I've been treating all of social ontology as having the same structure, but now I'm going to say, no, language is different. And indeed, language underlies the other